Hello and welcome to today's RTS Futures session. This is Working in a TV Art Department. I'm Alex, I'm the RTS Futures Chair and I'm also your host for today. So in the session today, what we're trying to find out is what it's really like to work in a TV art department, how you get your foot in the door, what skills you might need and how to stand out to potential employers. So, we're going to be speaking to a fabulous panel today. It's a mix of art directors, assistants and trainees, and they've got a wealth of experience across many of our favourite shows. So we'll be finding out about the responsibilities of an art department across shows such as Britain's Got Talent, Sex Education, Love Island, RuPaul's Drag Race, Father Brown and Glow Up, just to name a few. So we're hoping today that you can take some tips away and learn from the advice of our wonderful panelists. We're going to do 55 minutes of questions and finding out about the structure of an art department and how people got their first jobs and things like that. Then we're also going to post a handy little Padlet in the chat function, which will be a resource for you with links to articles and podcasts about how to get into the TV art department. So hopefully you'll be able to learn something from that as well. At the end of the session, so at about 3 o'clock, we're going to open up the questions to you online, and you can ask a question that will get answered by our wonderful panelists today. So please do ask a question. We've got a team on hand as well that will be still through them and making sure that I don't ask the same question twice, because that would probably happen. And we'll try and look for questions that we might not have covered in the session as well to give you the best possible overview. So it's worth mentioning, if you haven't already signed up to be an RTS Futures member, then it's free to join and you get access to online sessions that are also free, so free knowledge. Go ahead and sign up if you haven't already. The next session that we've got is on Thursday, the 2nd of July, and it's on TV distribution. So we'll be looking at what it's like to buy and sell TV programs, formats, scripted and non-scripted content, what the sort of skills you might need to get in, how you get your foot in the door, and things like that. So if that sounds of interest to you, then there'll be more information put up shortly on the RTS website. So I'd just like to thank a few people today. Firstly, my co-producer, Jude Stanley, who's brought in this wonderful panel today. And she's also curated the Padlet for you with all the resources on. So we're very grateful to Jude for that. Thank you. And then finally, just to thank this amazing panel that have joined us today. They've all given up their time to be here to share their wise words of wisdom. And we're very grateful. So without further ado, we'll kick off, and I am going to introduce this lovely panel by way of their experience in a certain genre, so that if you're hoping to get into a certain genre, whether it be entertainment or drama, you know which people to listen more closely to their answers on. So starting off, I'll go to the entertainment genre. So we've got Maddie Flint. Hi, Maddie.
Hi.
And you're an art director. You've worked across Britain's Got Talent, RuPaul's Drag Race, the fantastical Factory of Curious Craft, Supermarket Sweep, Ready Steady Cook. There's quite a lot in there. Fabulous. And then we also have Liv Hodder. Hi, Liv.
Hello. Hi.
So Liv's an art department assistant. So she's worked across BGT with Maddie, Britain's Got Talent, Celebrity Juice as well, and The One Show. And then moving over to drama, we have Emma Ryder. Hi, Emma.
Hello, you're right.
Hello. So Emma's an assistant art director. She's worked on Sex Education for Netflix, Sky series 2 Weeks to Live, and an animation, Moomin Valley. That sounds quite interesting. And then Lara Humphries is a junior draft person.
Hi.
What's a draft person?
The draft person works underneath the art directors and the assistant art directors on films or TV dramas, and they basically help draw up all the sets or details of the sets.
Wow, that sounds quite technical. So Lara's worked on films such as The Witches and Last Christmas, and then TV drama such as Father Brown and Shakespeare and Hathaway, private investigators for the BBC. So now we've got Ruby Asari, and she's the art department trainee. So you did the Screen Skills high-end TV trainee scheme, didn't you?
Yes, so that was last year. Yeah,
that's amazing. And you worked on a BBC and BFI film, Supernova, and then you're currently working on a drama, Suspicion, for Cachette. Is that right? Amazing. So moving from drama then to Fact 10, and some of the reality sits under this genre. So we've got Lizzie Chambers, who is art director.
Hi.
Hi, Lizzie.
Hi.
So you worked on Love Island, Back in Time from BBC Two, Strictly Come Dancing, Glow Up, and The Early Ways Essex. There's quite a lot in there as well.
Yeah, all different sites, all different locations and different things going on. Yeah.
Wow. And then Emily Dyson, who is the art department assistant. Hello. So you worked on Glow Up and Love Island Winter Edition.
Mm-hmm.
So you've worked with Lizzie.
Yes, yeah, I worked with Lizzie the last sort of year and a bit. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. So we've done our introductions, so I'll crack on with our questions. So the first thing we want to know is how you got your first job, and tell us a little bit about that, and then any progression. So I'll come in order of, I'll do the same order as I did for your introduction. So I'm going to start with you, Maddie.
Hi. So I started I think it was about 14 years ago. In my second year, I studied performance design at Central St Martin's, having wanted to do fashion, if I'm honest, and didn't get in. But
now look at you. Now look at you.
The right thing, yeah. Thank goodness. And in our second year, we were told we sort of had to do work experience, and I know things aren't the same now with work experience. So I know that I was lucky back then. I managed to get work experience on Eastenders, weirdly, my first thing, which is not what I do now. And on and can't actually remember what the other thing I did. But EastEnders sort of gave me my first little taster, did a week work experience, and then they gave me a job covering the assistant art director straight off the bat, just for 2 weeks, which was very lucky. And then from then on, I got art department runner jobs while I was still at uni on a show, Something for the Weekend, which is now Sunday Brunch, every Sunday, 5 a.m. start. So that was a good training. And then, yes, again, so more art department runner jobs. Meanwhile, that wasn't enough to be paying my rent at the time. But so I was working in a shop 5 days a week, working on TV shows the other 2 days, and that progressed. And to be honest, my everything is just, once you've got something and you impress somebody, getting another job, to be honest. So it's certainly in the TV I work in. So I did many years of being an art department runner. I did a couple of production runner roles, which I also think is really good, just to learn how the whole show works. And then somebody on something needed an assistant, and then I suddenly was an assistant. But as I say, this is over years. Like, don't get me wrong, this is over like slogging over years. And then at that time, I was doing like more prop making, so on big shows where they'd need something really silly. Like, I remember distinctly at the time injecting a banana with loads of blue ink on Anton Deck's Saturday Night Takeaway, and like I just was so excited that banana that I had injected with blue ink was going to be on the telly. Actually didn't work very well, but so yes. And then I sort of was on jobs where I was still called the assistant, but actually sort of ended up art directing. And one such job, which was Room 101, when it was on a while back, where the props were sort of the star of the show then. I don't know if anyone really saw it, but there was a prop make to illustrate different things. And I made those. There was an art director, but he wasn't in charge. I was in charge, and so somehow that was my first art director role. In the end, they realised that I was doing that role without being paid or acknowledged for it. And then, so from then on, I did smaller art directing shows, and then I was doing a show called Britain's Got More Talent, which is the ITV2 version of Britain's Got Talent, for many years, first as stage manager, and then as art director. And then from that, the art director of the main show, Britain's Got Talent, she left. And so because I was art director on the small show, I was very, very luckily offered the big show, which I wasn't ready for at the time. And now I do that, and for the last 5 years. And as such,
Wow.
I've got other big shows.
Gosh, that sounds amazing. And so Liv, you've worked on BGT, haven't you, with Maddie? How did you first start out?
Yeah, so this is going to really not be nearly as exciting as what Maddie just said. But I did fine art at York and graduated 4 years ago, I think. And then I just kind of wanted a job in art. Like, I didn't really mind what aspect it was. I just wanted to fall into something that did something creative. So I literally just Googled art jobs, and I applied for something at the BBC, which was an internship in BBC Arts. And I didn't really do my research, and I thought it was maybe a bit more practical, not knowing that it was more BBC4 kind of commissioning arts programs, which was still really interesting. But maybe not the route that I wanted to go down. But it got me into the building of Broadcasting House. So basically, when I was there at lunchtime, I would just snoop around and try and find anyone in the building that would, have any idea about TV and like arty stuff, and more making things, prop making. And I literally just wandered around the basement for a bit, and I found an art director down there who worked for the One Show. And yeah, I just chatted and said, if you could just let me hang out with you guys for a day. And then from there I met, contacts, and then I got onto the nightly show, which was a few years ago. It was an ITV thing that kind of, And then met Maddie through a little gang, and I went to do Celeb Juice, and you keep bumping into the same people in the same sort of crowds. And yeah, Celeb Juice, and yeah, BGT last year, and then X Factor, and all sorts of things. Did Supermarket Sweep for a bit as well. So yeah, not as nearly as extensive as Maddie's very long list of accolades, but yeah.
But great that you took the opportunity to snoop around and then just try and make contacts and network. How fantastic.
Yeah, that's definitely how I did it. I definitely didn't have to, I didn't give my CV to anyone until, I don't think I have for a long time, but yeah, just sort of chatted, and you have a go on it, and then they let you stay or something. So yeah, something like that.
Oh, thank you. So moving across now to drama, Emma, how did you get to work on a Netflix drama, and how did you start out?
Yeah, so I studied design for film and television at Nottingham Trent. Me and Lara actually studied in the same year. At Nottingham Trent, they made you do quite a lot of work experience whilst you were there, which is great. And again, that was different even just a few years ago, because they wouldn't pay you for work experience, and which is a lot better now, actually. Work experience people usually get paid, which I think helps a lot of people to get their foot in the door without taking a massive knock on actually being able to survive. So I did a lot of that, and then they taught us quite a lot of different skills at the course. So drafting, which is what Lara does full time now, which I've done as well as assistant art director, and also storyboarding. So my actual first job was on Emmerdale, storyboarding a big crash scene. So they offered to keep me on, but I ended up going over to a show called Safe House, which is in Liverpool, which is actually near where I lived, which was good at the time. And then that designer took me from there down to London on a film. And that's where I sort of based myself then, and sort of meet new people, because you're in a new area. So that sort of led on to new things. And then I was in Bristol. I move around quite a lot for jobs. Then I was in Bristol doing Moomin Valley, and I got that job via a tutor that did the DFTV course. So, and then whilst I was in Bristol, I was looking for more Bristol jobs, which led me to finding sex education. There was a few steps in between as well. There was a job where I went from assistant, and I interviewed for a job, and I didn't realise at the time that they were looking for assistant art director. And I sort of went in and was like, I don't think I can do that. And they ended up ringing me and saying, okay, do you want to do it? So you're constantly met with this like imposter syndrome. I don't know about everyone else, but you constantly feel like, oh, okay, I'm doing that now. I didn't think I could, but here I am. And it's sort of, you not fake it till you make it, but sort of, you know, try your best until you make it. So when I went for the sex education interview, it was slightly differently structured than it is now. We've been running for 3 years. And they were looking for an art department assistant. I actually went in and said, look, I really want to keep my assistant art director role. And Sam Hawley, who's the production designer, said, yeah, that's no problem. So I think sometimes you need to ask for a bit more and you will get it. And then Sam Howley took me on to 2 Weeks to Live, which is the Sky series, which I ended up art directing, and now I'm back on to Sex Education Series 3 when we start up. So yeah, wow. So only going around the country with different people, you usually meet designers who'll take you on to the next thing with them, or if not, they might know people who want your next role. So yeah, that sort of journey.
Wow, thank you. So I'm moving over to Lara. So you were on the same course as Emma?
Yeah, so I studied design for film and TV as well at Nottingham Trent. I graduated in 2016, and then I moved back home, as most people do, and I'm from Coventry, and I was trying to get my foot in the door, so I reached out to BBC Birmingham because they were quite close by, and I managed to get a job as a standby art director on Doctors, and then a lovely designer, Nick Turner, took me under his wing and took me on to Father Brown, that I was a trainee standby art director. And then from that, I became a standby art director on Shakespeare and Hathaway. And then I kind of took a step back and realised that I wanted to get into drafting. So then I also did what Ruby's on now, the Hgtv Screen Skills Traineeship. So I was on that for about 6 months, and they put me on a placement in Wales on a Channel 4 drama, and I managed to do lots of drafting and model making. And then from there I kind of went down the film route, and I asked a designer called Guy Freeman whether he needed anybody, and he did. It's just about being kind of in the right place at the right time and reaching out to the right person at the right time. So I ended up going on to Last Christmas, and then yeah, just progressed from there. Now I'm working for Disney as a junior draftsperson.
That's amazing, working for Disney, you know, fantastic. So Ruby, you've done the high-end TV trainee scheme with Screen Skills, and then did you go on to, is it Supernova?
Yes, so I have an interior design background, so I studied interior design at uni and then worked for a year as well in interior design, and decided it wasn't quite for me, wanted sort of the fast-paced, imaginative, sort of more interiors to the sets. So then I applied and got onto the Screen Skills Trainee Finder, and got put onto Supernova, which will be out next year, which is a film. It was completely on location in the Lake District, which was a great first experience. So yeah, like a lot of us were sort of based in a sort of holiday park, living with crew. So it was a really intimate, but really great way to sort of enter the industry for me, because I became like quite good friends with all of the crew, and it was a nice sort of environment to ask lots of questions, and go paddle boarding and hiking in the mountains. So that was a great experience. That was 10 weeks in the Lake District for that film. And then after Christmas, so with Screen Skills, they sort of send you productions that are looking for trainees. So it's quite good in that you sort of get sent the application and then you apply for it instead of sort of constantly searching. So I applied for Suspicion, which we're looking for a trainee, And then, yeah, got onto that. Was working for 3 weeks and then coronavirus hit. But yes, that should be up and running again, hopefully soon. And
I hope so. Thanks, Ruby. And then moving over to Fact 10, Lizzie, I don't know, how did you start out?
Well, I did a little bit like Ruby. I did an interior design course, but I swapped over. So a lot of the people I was at uni with graduated a year before me. So by the time I came to graduate, a friend of mine had got a job as staff in an art department for a TV company years ago, when people did have staff jobs, which I think we're going to touch on in a bit. And the boss of her company wanted some curtains making. And she said, you got to do it, you got to do it. So I made these curtains, and these curtains were longer than my house, my student house. It was like this kind of big leap of faith that I thought, right, I'm going to do it. And from there, I got a staff job working in an art department, quite similar to what Maddie's talking about. I think our histories have been quite similar in the way that you just kind of keep saying yes to things by the skin of your teeth. You know, you get given a load of props, or you get given a brief and you kind of do it. And the thing is, with lots of our entertainment TV, it's over in a second. It's made for something that's going to be kind of made for that evening show, or, you know, probably a week top. So you kind of do it, you cobble it together, and then hope that you've kind of gained some skills from it, and then you move on to the next thing. So from there, a woman I knew was moving on to do changing rooms, which was in the days of interior design programs. Did all those kind of interior design programs for a while. Then somebody knew somebody who was a designer of Strictly, so I worked for him for a few years. And again, like Maddie, it's kind of hearing about a job, just not necessarily having done it before, but you just say, yeah, I'm going to do it. You kind of end up on a show. Each show tends to have its different requirements, so you kind of develop your skills in one way or another depending on what's needed. So I did Strictly for a bit, and then I kind of, again, through working with different people, ended up working on a completely different type of program back in time, where it was brilliant because it was all about researching history of interiors. Weirdly, a lot of the programs I've worked on have been interior design based. I don't know whether that's me leaning towards them, or whether, you know, they're the kind of jobs that come up. And then about 5 years ago, working on Love Island, which I've done with Emily for the last 5 years. So getting to go to Mallorca every year and working on the interior. But yeah, I mean, very similar to, as I say, to Maddie, kind of having one big show and then other shows around it where your skills slightly differ, but you're kind of you know, working in the moment, shall we say. Yeah.
Oh wow, sounds very interesting, and how you've progressed and the different experience. Emily, I'm going to come to you now as well. So just give us a quick overview of how you started. And
sure. So I started out, I'm from Leeds, so I did an art foundation course after my degree, after my A-levels at Leeds Uni, because it had links to UAL, and that I knew that's kind of the uni I wanted to go to. I wasn't sure. And one of my tutors on that art foundation course used to be an art director in light entertainment, basically. So she kind of suggested that it was an option. To be honest, I didn't even know it was a job. I really didn't know it existed. And then she showed me a few different courses. I saw the Nottingham Trent course that Lara and Emma talked about. And there was also a course at Wimbledon, which was set design for screen at the time. So I applied, I did my year's foundation, and then I moved down to London and did the 3-year course there, which was brilliant. It's not what I expected, because it was more of it felt like an extension of college. It was kind of 5 days a week, studio time, wasn't really taught lectures. It was just kind of, you get set a brief and you work on it. But it was great because you kind of got to see an overarching idea of what the industry was going to be and kind of what all the different roles were. And so many people on the course ended up going down different routes. People have gone into animation, people have gone into interior design and kind of studied further from that. even though I thought it was going to be quite a niche degree, and I was panicking that it wouldn't give me the right kind of start, and that if I couldn't find a job in TV, I wouldn't be able to do anything after doing that degree. But it was the total opposite. And again, like the Nottingham Trent, they really pushed work experience. So in my second year, I worked for a construction and design company called Scott Fleary for a couple of weeks. And whilst I was there, there was art directors from TV shows that Scott Fleary were currently building coming in for their meetings, and I would kind of sit in and chat to them afterwards. And I just kind of made friends with one of the people, Paul Hewson, a designer, and he came back from my graduation show and gave me work whilst I was kind of sat manning the degree show, which was great. And he kind of gave me work for the next few months after that, but it wasn't often enough at the time to kind of, for me to keep living in London and not have to move home. So I was working as well, just kind of in a shop on the side. And then I met one of my old tutors posted, we had like a after uni looking for work Facebook group, and she posted saying that there was a commercial designer who needed an assistant for a weekend. It was unpaid. It was a night shoot in November in a rather sketchy area of London. And I thought, yeah, sure. So I did that, and it was absolutely brutal. It was freezing cold. It was lashing down with rain. I was not kind of prepared for what it was going to be like. But I made a good impression. He was a really nice guy, and he likes to work with a permanent assistant. So, which I think is unusual for a few designers, but he had recently kind of parted ways with his assistant who he'd had for a few years, and he was looking for someone new. So it was completely just right place, right time, and total imposter syndrome, same as you, Emma. I thought, I definitely can't do this. But he offered me kind of a trial, and I did that, and I ended up staying with him for 18 months doing commercials, which was amazing because it's a small department. You kind of get to do everything and kind of see all elements of it. And I met a load of different people through him because he was quite, he got some really great clients and some good jobs. And then ended up kind of weirdly getting back in touch with Paul from the TV jobs, and he gave me a few bits of work. And then I kind of moved into an art director role, and then started with Matt and Lizzie with BusyBot doing Love Island and Glow Up and things like that. And that's just kind of gone from there.
Wow, gosh, so some fantastic experience and kind of roots through, and it's who you know, isn't it, and making the most of your opportunities, isn't it, I guess. What you're saying. So I'm going to move on so we can get through these questions, and I thought it'd be great to understand how like a TV art department is usually structured. What I'll do is I might just come, Maddie, to you, if you could just you know, talk about entertainment, and then Lizzie if it differs in these genres, and then we'll move on to drama. So Maddie, I'll start with you. How is a team structured, and what do certain roles do?
Well, interestingly, listening to the others in drama, I would say it's less structured than that for sure. So generally there's a designer, and then they are head of the art department. However, on some shows, there'll be the designer, and then there'll be an art director working for them that will be drawing up and helping them with the set, which is sometimes me, sometimes the same art director as for the show, but sometimes it can be completely separate. So for example, on a show like Britain's Got Talent, the designer and art director are sort of their own bubble, and then I'm the art director more for the show and the production. So I would work more for the producers rather than for the designer on a show like that, for example. So on just BGT, as an example, as a big entertainment show, there is myself. I'm very lucky to get 2 assistants and 2 runners, art department runners. Right. Then we have a buyer who is her own entity, and then there is the crew, you know, our crew who put sets together. There are 2 carpenters, 2 painters, 2 stage managers, and they, I would say, all encompass the art department as such. And on a show like that, I'm sort of in charge of what those people do in terms of I'm getting the brief from the producers, and on that show there's also a creative director, which is another complication which I won't go into now. And then I'm sort of giving all the information to all those other people to what they can do and their role in it, because obviously that's a sort of huge show with lots of cogs. But on other shows, it could be it can just be me.
Oh, okay.
Or it can be me and a runner, or it can be me and an assistant, or it can be me and a buyer. And on a lot of, I sort of half and half do shows like that, and half and half do shows where I'm an art director for a designer. So I work with a designer called Josh Grace, who took me under his wing about 6 years ago, perhaps. And he's taught me so much, and generally any show he's doing, I will do. But then I'll also be doing bits on other shows where they don't need a designer, you know, more sort of the shows that Lizzie's talking about where we might be on location, or it's more like a dressing sort of show rather than needing a whole set built, in which case I would, you know, essentially be the designer, but not called that. So that's a bit new, I realise.
It depends. Lizzie, do you have anything to add? Does it all depend in kind of fact and reality, you know, depend on the size of the production?
Exactly. I mean, generally speaking, you know, you've either got a dressing job where it's just you and maybe a runner or an assistant, or a bigger job like Love Island, Matt Weeks, Busy Bot, he kind of heads it up. And then on that we've got 3 or 4 different art directors, some who do like depends on the stage of the build as well. So you might get like a build art director, which is what I am, and then you'll get someone who will kind of do the run, which will be much more involved in like the games art directing. And then Emily might stagger both. Well, obviously Emily will speak for herself, but yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on how big the show is. I think the structurally, really, like Maddie was saying, it's a designer, an art director, and then assistants, and that kind of gets as big as or as small as the job itself, really. But yeah, and those, it's not always the same job. The art directing job is not always the same role, depending on what the job is as well. So yeah.
Oh, right. And Emma, for drama, is it similar in terms of the structure?
I think it's a little bit different. We sort of, obviously we have the designer. It depends totally on the budget of the show as well. So you can have something that's a lot smaller, and then all the way up to the things that Lara's working on, where the art department can be 60, 70, up to 100 people. And that's just the art department. So sort of like the middle sort of BBC sort of Netflix stuff that I work on, it's usually designer, and then it's split straight away into sort of art director. So you've got supervising art director who will be over the art directors and the assistant art directors, all the way down to an art department assistant. And then the other side of that is set decoration. So you've got a set decorator who is over a buyer and a petty cash buyer, and they might have their own assistant on that side as well. On the sort of stuff that I work on, it usually we're in the same room and we're all working together. Where the larger stuff, it can be quite separate. You might not even meet the people in the set decoration department. They might have their own drafts people drawing, like Game of Thrones, they had their own drafts people just to draw up specific furniture, where usually art directors on like sets education, art directors and assistant art directors, we would draw up the sets and oversee construction. And then the set decorator would oversee, I might be butchering this because I'm very much art director inside, but you know, the furnishings and the dressing and all the stuff that makes a set really come alive with a lot of character, which is quite fun. Those extra layers is what they'll provide. And then sort of, I'll let Lara talk about this, but like in the art director side, they will then have drafts people who, and Lara, do you want to tell them about sort of where the drafts people come into that hierarchy?
Yeah, of course. So I've got a unit list next to me from one of my old jobs, and for anyone that doesn't know, unit list is basically a list of all the contacts of the people working on the film. So I'm just looking at art department. So it goes production designer, supervisor and art director. Then you've got your art directors. They could be working on separate sets, on locations. Then you've got the assistant art directors working under them. And then you've got the drafts people, junior drafts people. You might have vehicle art directors, VFX art directors. It's all roles that I didn't even know existed when I first was starting out. So now I'm a junior drafts person. Then you also have like graphics assistants, art department coordinator, art department assistants, and art department runners. It can be such a huge art department. I mean, the things that I'm working on now are completely different to what I started. So I've kind of seen a vast array of art departments, and each job is different. But yeah, it can go from like 60 people plus. And then I've also worked in art departments where it's just 2 people in the art department. So yeah, it changes a lot. So you've got to be open.
So totally varies. Oh, yeah.
Different people can take on different parts of the job as well. So you can have an art director that does the graphics of the whole job and the prop makes. And then also, I don't think everyone's mentioned the standby art director as well. So they're the person on set, like we might never see a bit of filming happen, but they're the people on set that are making sure that the designer's vision, everything looks good in the shot, and it's, you know, the director will come in and change things, and they've got to make sure that it still stays true to the character and the designer's vision, and also the continuity as well. So,
right, fantastic. So I'm going to move on now to the assistants. What is expected of an assistant or a trainee? Liv, could I start with you?
Yeah. Okay. Well, so it's tricky because I go between runner and assistant, because obviously for the really big shows like BGT and X Factor and things, because they are so big, I've been runners on those, whereas I can be an assistant on something that's a bit smaller. So I think for the most part, I mean, what's expected is the same general rules, that you are, you know, always on time and you're there to do what your art director tells you. But as far as the actual role goal, are you asking like what the role entails, or?
Yeah, what, you know, yeah, tell us a bit about what you're expected to do, in a typical day.
Yeah, well, so for the entertainment live stuff, I mean, BGT is the funnest one to sort of explain, because it could just be anything, and you can turn up at 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning, whenever the call time is, and you don't know what you're doing until maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And a lot of it is just, you know, completely staying aware, and Maddie will just tell us when things need to be done and when things are going to be made. But we'll have a general plan at the beginning of the day, and she'll sit us down and say, sort of, this is what we're looking at for tonight. And then, you know, by 4 o'clock, everything has turned on its head, and we are drastically like making massive foam bubbles that need to float in the air or something. It can just go from one to the other. So it's quite a tricky question, I feel like, probably for most art departments, saying what can you expect, because you kind of have to expect everything, because you don't really know. You could be one minute you could be sewing something and doing some really textile based stuff, and the next minute you could be running out trying to find a pink candle that has purple spots. Like, it literally goes from anything and everything. You know, one day I can spend a week buying stuff for, you know, for the buyer and the team, or just going shopping and driving around and getting things, and then I could be making something, or then I could be, you know, dressing the stage and doing every kind of job in the department. But I suppose from my role being the runner / assistant, you just have to do sort of not everybody's job, but you have to have your finger in everybody's pies in the art department, because you're there to help everybody. You know, you're there to help the painters, the carpenters, the stage managers. It's a really fun role, because even though you're kind of not at the bottom of the pile, but you are, you know, not in the nicest way to put it, you're at the bottom end of the scale in terms of the art department. But it's so fun because you get to have a go at everybody's jobs in a way. You get to kind of help with everyone, so it's really fun. But I think what's expected is just everything. That's a really bad answer, just saying everything, but it kind of
being
is.
Flexible and thinking on your feet.
Yeah.
Ruby, how have you found it going from your kind of your screen skills trainee scheme and then going on to you know, working on a film? That must have been quite a change for you and a challenge?
Yeah, it's very different, also between film and television as well, and particularly because the film was a small budget independent film, and the TV series that I'm working on is a huge sort of Apple TV, big showy wow production. So like the scales are very different, and the type of work is also, I suppose, yeah, different. Like when I was working in the Lake District, a lot of my job sort of entailed going and picking things up from suppliers or sourcing things, and I got a chance to sort of do a lot of different things, so helping out a standby art director on set, while they were filming, doing things like resetting all of the props on the table in between scenes. So if it's a food scene and they're eating, sort of when in between takes, going and replacing their plates and making sure everything looked the same as it did in the previous scene. So that's really fun, working on set. And then in the office, sort of doing small graphics and all of the little things that make props come to life. So a recipe book, filling the book with recipes, or a school for a student's bag, her school books, and filling her maths book, and all the little tiny details that are really fun to do, that not necessarily other people in the department have time to do. Also going to locations and helping the art directors with measuring up. And because of my sort of background in interior design, it meant that I was able to help with the drafting as well. So drawing things up, and yeah, just helping out everyone basically.
Being flexible.
Yes,
yeah.
Being really flexible and sort of, yeah, saying, yes, I'll help you with this, and yeah, just having a go at everything.
Great, thank you. So we'll move on now just to about how you find work, and this is in normal times. I don't know, maybe Maddie, you know, I know it might differ about how you find your work compared to maybe some of the more junior roles, but are there any places that you think are really good in normal times of places to find work?
If I'm completely honest, I've never, since university, which is a long time ago, I've never done a course. I don't think I've even ever applied for a job, if I'm honest. And I know that makes me sound really lucky, but I can't stress that in art, and I realise now, hearing everybody else, how different what we do is to other people, is really people. And I know that's so frustrating for people starting out. But so, I mean, a lot of people, sometimes I'll get an email, or the designer I work for will get an email. And I think really it's a good idea to the sort of show you might want to work on, look for the designer or art director, find out their information and email them. In all honesty, you might hear nothing back, and then you might 6 months later, because it's totally timing. When you, like I say, we rarely get the chance for a big art department, and when I do, there are, in all honesty, you know, being brutal, there are loads of great people already who I would call on, but sometimes you need somebody new, and also that goes with other shows. So, for example, the designers and the art directors have got a WhatsApp group, and quite often if somebody needs somebody new, you know, it's literally, anybody got any good new art department runners, and then that's it. So I know that's so unhelpful thing to say, but to be honest, the only way I can think of to get into our sort of TV is just emailing people that you like, the sort of shows that you, and I don't mean like it as in like you might want to watch it. You've got to think, what is the art department doing on that show? That sounds like that could be fun because they've made that prop or whatever, sort of think of it like that. And then email them, and don't be offended if you don't hear back, but because you might when you least expect it.
No, it's good advice, keeping that network going as well, and keeping building relationships with people. Lizzie, is there anything you would add to that at all?
Well, I mean, again, it's a very similar situation. I would say, even if you think the last thing anybody is going to want is a phone call after they've sent in a CV, a couple of people recently have sent me a CV, and you just know you haven't got any work for a bit, and you think, I don't even know what to say to them, because you know, I haven't necessarily got anything. But like Maddie said, suddenly a job might come in, and even if it's just for one day, you think, oh, I'm sure I got a CV that those kind of skills were on it, and yeah, I need to have somebody who can start tomorrow. But a couple of people who have sent their CVs in have called me, and even though if you're the person doing the calling, you just think you must be the most irritating person, just having that second kind of connection has made me then think, oh, okay, it's almost kind of made me remember them more when it has come to the point of, and I remember doing that for a job when I went for my job on changing rooms. She told me it was because I'd called and followed up from sending in my CV. So it probably goes against the grain of what most people want to do, but I do think that could help maybe. But like Maddie said, look on the end of titles of TV shows, or go onto databases, or use case catalogue, you know, find ways that you can find designers. Don't be put off or offended if you don't hear from them. Just keep going. You just never know. It could be that one day when, or like Maddie said, we could get calls saying, I'm looking for someone, can you find, you know, and there's usually not a lot of prep. It could be something that needs to be tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock on location, and you're thrown straight in, and you just have to kind of run with it once you get that job. It's another thing is it's, for good or bad, TV is very much about being quite extrovert, even if you're not an extrovert person. So the minute you get that job, put on a face and make it sound like you're really enthusiastic, because sadly, quiet people sometimes don't immediately make much of an effect, which I hate to say, but I'm not necessarily a loud person, but I think you've got to show real enthusiasm from the beginning. Yeah.
That's great. That's good advice. Thank you.
Just
Sorry,
adding,
Maddie.
just I totally agree with everything Lizzie says, and that quite often it's the designers that get all the emails from runners, whereas actually, like Josh, the designer I work with, he doesn't need a runner. He has me. It's me that needs the runners. So I would recommend also contacting like art directors, because it's rarely the designers that are employing the whole team, or certainly having less direct contact.
Okay, that's great advice. Thank you, Maddie. So what are the hours like? So Emily, I'm going to come to you. You worked on Love Island, for instance. What are the hours like working on a show like that?
Well, Love Island's kind of unique in that you've got kind of the couple of months of prep that people don't necessarily think about before we're out in a different country doing the filming. So the prep is usually working from kind of ITV or from the designer's house, kind of just standard 10-hour days, doing the design, kind of SketchUp models, renders, things like that, and then some construction drawings. And sometimes if we're down to the wire, it means putting a few extra hours in, but it's not kind of over the top in that stage. Then obviously getting out to Mallorca or for South Africa for the show, it's completely different every day. You have a set day again of 10 hours with good breaks, because you're working in hot weather as well, and a lot of it outside. But it depends. In the build stage, it kind of stays at that sort of 10-hour day, but as we get down to the wire, you might be doing bits of overtime. And then when the show's on, I don't know if people have ever watched it, but sometimes we film into the evening, or there's an event going on, like a party or a Spotify or whatever, and that goes into an evening, so you'll be on kind of a split shift and you end up working into the night. But it's just kind of being there when you're needed. So many things need changing, and it's swapping things in and out and being aware of checking the cameras to see if things have moved as crew have moved in and out. So the day will go on as long as it needs to go on. Yeah.
So you need to make sure you've had your frosties in the morning with lots of energy.
Exactly.
Sounds like long hours. And
Little cereal
Lara,
bar in your kit.
yeah. Lara, you've worked on films, haven't you?
Yeah.
And is it similar hours? I know sometimes it take a lot longer to film, but there's kind of quite long days.
Yeah, it depends what kind of stage you're at. So when you're in the prep stage, so before you start filming, your hours are kind of set. So I'd normally do, say, 8 till 6:30 would be standard. But then as soon as you start filming, that can change depending on whether you're doing night shoots or if they need some people in the art department for longer hours. Like, it can completely change. And also when I was a standby art director, it depended on whether, you know, when they wanted to film. So if they wanted to film at night, then yeah, your hours can completely vary. You just need to be open to that. But when it comes to the weekend, just try and switch off is my advice.
Great, thank you. So just moving on now to my question is about kind of like freelance, and does anyone in each genre get is anyone a staffer? Have they got like a full-time contract, or is it very much freelance work? Lizzie, I'll come to you first. In, you know, Fact and Reality, is it all kind of freelance?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, when I didn't really even know how lucky I was when I started out, because I did get a staff job, but we're going back maybe 20 years and things were structured slightly differently. I mean, I'd say now everything is freelance. I mean, like we've been saying about, you tend to get in with certain designers. So like Emily and I work for BusyBot, who ideally have things throughout the year. So it could be that you might go on to contract with the same designer with a company, but that's not necessarily always stable because it depends on whether those jobs come in. So I'd say it is always freelance, and that can be a day dressing for me, or it can be 3 months if it's something like Love Island, or it all depends on what is required. But yeah, all freelance now, I'd say. I don't know if everyone agrees, but yeah.
Maddie, oh yeah, and Emma is in same vein, drama.
Yeah, sorry to jump in. Yeah, I'd definitely say everything's sort of freelance, and I guess the more staffer like jobs are the soaps. So, you know, Hollyoaks we've worked on, and Emmerdale, and that has a bit more of that environment, and the hours are a bit shorter, but other than that, yeah, it's freelance. And you might get a designer who might not necessarily, you might do like a 6-month job and they might not necessarily want to go on to the next job straight away, but all the crew is going, oh, I could just use some money for Christmas, so then they might take that job to carry on that, or to keep everyone together as well, which is important to a lot of art departments. So yeah.
And do you guys have a kind of an idea of like what sort of you know, pay you would say people you know, assistant level are paid, for instance? I don't know, Maddie, do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I always think it's not really talked about enough, and honestly enough, to be honest. I just sort of to add on to that, I think it's important to that in like, for example, our sort of TV, Liv and I, and like where Lizzie and Emily are sort of, you know, overlaps it a bit. We do not do like you're never getting a 6-month contract. Like you're not really getting a 5-day-a-week contract ever. I will get you'll know the studio days you're filming, and then you might get, say, 4 days prep or 10 days prep, and you might do those over 3 weeks. And the way that you make it work to pay your mortgage is by overlapping jobs and really timetabling your life through the studio days. And then your other days are more like, I might be working on 4 different shows in a day, in responding to emails and working on things. So I just think that's an important distinction, because in art, you don't want to go into entertainment if you want a proper job, because that's not going to happen. In terms of pay, designer's wage can vary a lot. So I wouldn't want to guess, but I would say they could maybe be earning between like 500 to $1,000 or so a day, because I get paid daily personally. My daily wage is anywhere between 300 and 350, which is, you know, on significantly lower than a lot of branches of TV and film, but also significantly higher than lots of other shows. An assistant might be on between 200 and 250, and then a runner sort of between 100 and 150.
I remember getting paid £75 a day, and it is tough. It is really tough. So you know, it's you've got to really love it, haven't you, to kind of put in the extra
thing, because there's no point in doing it if you don't love it. You know.
Can I suggest as well that people check out the Back2 rate card, which is on the Back2 website, and that sort of gives an idea of different sectors and how much they would get paid, and it helps you work out whether someone's trying to rip you off. I don't think a lot of productions do, but I think it's knowing your worth as well. And like, if you feel like you can say to them, say if you've got a car, for example, and they've offered you £500 a week, and you say, well, actually, I'm going to be driving every day, can I have £100 car allowance? That's totally within your right to ask for. They might say no, but you know, I think Maddie's right, like, familiarise, there should be more talk about it, and be afraid to ask for a bit more. They might say no, but you've asked, they might say yeah. So
I agree, and specifically like Back2 and things don't really cover entertainment.
Oh, do they not? Oh, sorry.
No, but that, I think that's an important thing to point out, and something that is trying to change. That you might have an idea in your head, and sadly it might be wrong, but so.
Yeah. And can I just also add as well that, like we were saying before, it's not necessarily that day rate doesn't always cover a 10-hour day. You know, it's a weird split at the moment, where sometimes tradespeople like chippies and painters and people in our side of things anyway, isn't it, Maddie? They might be able to define a 10-hour day. Art department seems to be kind of a bit of a grey area, so that's not necessarily saying that rate is for only a 10-hour day. And differently to Lara saying, ours usually is at the weekend for some reason. Like in entertainment, you don't get weekends, it's just, it is when it is, and for some weird reason a lot of filming does take place on a Sunday and Saturday, just to point out.
And also the difference between the industries, just a really quick thing, is that I noticed going from commercials into TV, I was quite lucky to start off in commercials and kind of had a grass is always greener side of it coming straight out of uni. My first assistant rate was like between 200 and 250, like from the get-go. But you're doing, you know, a week's work, super intense, every hour of the day and night, and then nothing for 2 weeks. So it was kind of knowing how to spread your money across that time. If you don't know where your next job's going to come from, and even though I was working with one designer and he was very busy, it would go 2 or 3 weeks with nothing, and have to think, right, yes, I've earned a lot of money this week, but I've got to make that last. So then I ended up taking a pay cut coming into TV, which seems like a strange thing to then be in a higher role but be earning slightly less. But it's the regularity of it, that I earn much more regular money now than I did with commercials.
That's good. Thank you, everyone. So we've only got a couple of more minutes left before we go to the audience. So I'm going to do a quick fire round question. So it's your number one top tip for impressing, and I'll come round to each of you. Lizzie, do you want to go first? Without putting you on the spot too much.
I don't know if I have been very impressive. I think it's just kind of being enthusiastic, just always being there, not really always kind of saying yes and making it work somehow. And you know, most of the jobs I've been on, there's been a big percentage of that job I've not known how to do, but you just kind of, you know, you just show enthusiasm, I think, is the main thing. And I know people who come to work on a team or work with me, enthusiasm is so important. If someone looks like they can't be bothered and I'd rather do it myself, then that's kind of a big no for me.
Right, thanks, Lizzie. Maddie, do you have any? Yes, saw that you agreed with that, but any other tips?
I wholeheartedly agree with that. Yeah, and Liv will know, because you know, you get thrown in at the deep end on jobs, and I always, my warning to people starting with me is always like, you're going to have to go and get lunch. You're going to have to get dinner. I'm sorry, they're rubbish things to do, but we all need to be fed. And that is like, that's sort of number one. After that, the role gets more and more creative, but basically anybody who can get stuck in, enthusiastic, but without pushing your own agenda, and sort of at the end of the day, everyone's really busy and just trying to get the job done. So you sort of got to find your place to fit in as much as you can, and just be friendly and enthusiastic and not expect to get home in time for tea.
Yeah.
Emma, do you have anything to add?
I think starting out on the lower roles, I think quite a practical tip might be don't put your headphones in and listen to music, because you as an assistant or a runner, I think you should be listening to what everyone's saying all the time, so that if someone then asks for something, you've already done it because you've heard them say it. And I think the least amount of times you can say to someone no or I don't know, like you should always say I'll find that out, or yeah, I'll make that happen, or can you give me 2 hours. Just try and not say no or don't know, as practically as possible.
That's great. Lara, do you have anything for us?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what everyone said, but yeah, just to keep lines of communication open between everyone in the department and be respectful of everyone's roles. Find out what they do, find out what they're doing, and yeah, just don't be afraid to ask questions.
That's a good one.
Yeah, work hard. That's all it is, really.
Ruby?
Yeah, mine was going to be not being afraid to ask questions. I think in the beginning, I don't know, you feel the pressure that you should know everything, but of course you don't, because you're just starting out and you shouldn't be expected to know everything. So yeah, just when you're given a task, making sure that you know exactly what you need to do. And if you don't know, just ask, and it will help you do your job better. So yeah, it's not a weakness to ask questions.
Liv, do you have anything?
Yeah,
Sorry, we might be running out of tips here, but
I know.
if you've got one, throw it in.
Ones are just smile as much as you can. Honestly, just be smiling. It makes such a difference. Have good bladder control. I know that's a bit of a one, but know when to go to the loo, and when to say you're doing some menial task. Not everyone needs to know what you're doing all the time. Just be busy. Have a car. I think having a car has made a massive difference, and driving. And I know that's a privilege. It is a privilege, and I know it's a bit difficult for everybody, but it does. I think it is a bit of an unspoken thing, that being able to drive a car around confidently, it is like a secret skill in a way. But yeah, just smile, make tea when no one's asked for tea. Just make it and put it down and walk away. Don't ask, do you want a tea or a coffee? Do you want me to do anything? Just read the room. If it's obvious.
Read the room.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Emily, last but not least.
No pressure. Mine was going to be make a good cup of tea. They actually did a little mini class at our uni where everybody had to make tea and make it
proper brew.
Yeah, a proper brew, a proper Yorkshire brew, no matter where in the country you are, and write everything down. Like from day one of the first set decks I worked with, she's incredible but terrifying, and she said, write everything down that you hear in the room, because I'm not writing it down, and if I miss it, I'm going to look at you and ask you what was said. So it was a strong learning curve, but it was brilliant. So yeah, just constantly pen and paper, everything you hear, write it down, even if it seems completely trivial at the time.
Fabulous. Thank you, everyone. So we're going to move on now to our audience questions. The first one here is, I don't have the name, unfortunately, but they ask, do you have a background or degree in an arts subject? Do you have to have one? A background degree in an arts subject in order to progress in this part of the industry, or are traineeships and work experience just as useful? I don't know if Maddie, you want to go? It looks like you might speak.
I'll go. Yeah. Yes. I mean, you don't have to, but if I'm honest, there's so many people that have. It's very useful for me. In the honest, most basic skill is being able to cut in a straight line. Sounds stupid, but like a bit of foam board, a scalpel, and a metal ruler. If you can cut in a straight line, that's sort of number one. And if you haven't done model making or any sort of making at university, then that might not be a skill you have. It sounds so stupid, but you might not use any of your skills from university in what you're doing if you do what we do, but it's just a nice basis. So.
Anyone want to add anything to that?
I would just say from doing a really specific course like set design for screen, we were told to kind of look around the room and these are the people that you're going to be working with in the future. Like in some respects, you're going to hire the people in this room or they might hire you. And so for that, I think it was really useful. Like I've made contacts from uni that have come on jobs before and I've come to work for them. And I think that will continue in the future. And I still have a good relationship with the uni and the tutors. But I don't necessarily think it's absolutely necessary. I think there's a lot of good traineeships and different avenues in now. But personally for me, it was worth it.
Yeah, I would say you definitely don't have to have a TV course background. But something creative, definitely.
And
Okay,
if you just have...
Oh, sorry, Emma.
Oh, so sorry. And if you do just have examples of art that you've created, whether that's like photography or drawing, and like you say, Maddie, I've met so many people who've come in not being able to cut a straight line, and you go, can't everyone do this? And you realize, no, it is a niche in a way, but it is those creative people. So even if you don't have a portfolio because you've not worked on a short film or anything like that, but if you say, look, this is art that I can create, the graphic designer that day might be like, actually, I'd like some of that. You know, it just adds a little visual thing. So don't necessarily need the course. It's great if you do, but if you can add something visual to it and show that you are a creative person, I think that helps.
Great. So Courtney asks, is technical drawing a vital skill to work in an art department? Don't know if anyone wants to take that one.
Not
I can say, even though I'm a drafts person,
yeah.
It's not. It really depends on what you want to do. Well, for the first 2 years of working, I didn't technical draw at all. I was working on set. I was making props, you know, doing the more practical side of it, and I didn't have to draft at all. I mean, it depends what you want to do, and if drafting to you is important, then you can pursue that. There are ways of doing that without having to go to uni. But I think the answer is no. Like you don't need it. It depends on what you want to do.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'd just say that my computer skills are pretty terrible, but I've kind of come up working much more practically with my hands, and then at the point I am now, I'm lucky enough that I can then employ someone like Emily. Well, not directly employ her, but do you know what I mean? There'll be a pool of people who, if I need someone with technical skills, I could specifically bring somebody in. Again, just like Lara said, it kind of depends on what you want to do. If you want to be a set dresser or you want to be, you know, kind of more practical, then you don't necessarily have to have technical skills. It helps, but you don't have to have them.
Great, thank you for that. So Louis Bailey is asking, do you have any suggestions for what to brush up on skill-wise while we're in lockdown, like how you can brush up on your skills? I don't know if anyone has any advice.
I'll chip in. In terms of RTV, Photoshop, you can do some SketchUp if you want to be fancy. I personally just use Vectorworks for technical drawing, SketchUp occasionally to do something 3D, and Photoshop. A lot of people are really good at loads of other programs, but I would also stress that until you're, and I want to stress this only for what I do, until you're at my level, you might never touch a computer because you're running around. So don't be expecting to be showing anything fancy on a computer for a while once you started.
I think it depends which avenue you want to go down as well, because for me, I focused more on the digital side of things in my degree just because I enjoyed it. And now, I mean, I do pretty much all of the construction drawings and we build everything in 3D digitally. So I do SketchUp pretty much every day. So I think it's a great thing. And whilst it's still a free tool, which I don't know how much longer it's going to be free for, I think it's a really good time to learn how to do it. Even just so you can learn to kind of look around a model, even if you're not designing it yourself. Like if the models we use go out to every single department that we build, and you know, the camera department are seeing where they could put good cameras, the lighting department get it to see where they're going to put the lights. Like just being able to open the model and look around it, I think is useful. but that's quite specific, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure.
I think
Great.
something that I've noticed as well that I could even be doing and everyone can be doing is that because we've got so much time to watch TV and actually watch the stuff that you make, like a lot of the things I've worked on, I've never actually had chance, just because you work on that and then you go on to another job. You don't actually have a chance to sit down and watch the programs you've worked on or programs that you really like. So, you know, or watching normal people, and I would stop on the credits and be like, who did that? Because that was great. And just making like notes of stuff, like whilst you've got the privilege of sleep for sure, like sleep as much as you can, because if you want to work in TV, you can kind of forget about that. But yeah, just making notes of the things you're watching that you actually would like to go and pursue after this. I think make sure you're like watching stuff really in detail and rewinding and looking at the room that they're actually filming in, or looking at the set or the stage. Just take some extra time to watch more carefully.
You're so right. I think that when you're busy working, you're so limited on time to do other things. Like on the Padlet that we put the link for in the chat, there'll be lots of resources, and I guess just going on and researching and watching and coming to online sessions and stuff, that you're already kind of brushing up on your skills because you're learning, aren't you, from others. So I think hopefully that answers your question out quickly. We've got 5 minutes left. So Lizzie Downs asks, is it possible to move over to the art department from another department? Don't know if anyone wants to take that one.
I've definitely known people to do it, but I don't think it gives you necessarily, and I don't know about the sort of entertainment side, but I don't think it gives you any advantage over people who are coming from another part, other than knowing the structure of maybe filming, or knowing how to talk to production because you know different members there, or just the, you know, being able to meet people. But I'd say not necessarily, unless anyone else has any idea.
I think maybe if you're kind of you're going in at a level where you're like, if you in our industry it's like production and then you get the creative side, and I think if you start down a production route and you're in your early stages and then you realize it's not for you, I think that's kind of okay, because you haven't defined your role so much. But I think when you start getting higher up, I think, you know, as Emma was just saying, it doesn't necessarily give you an advantage. You might be in the right place to meet people, but I don't think it's like necessarily in a direct inroad, I think.
Great, thank you. So moving on, Stephanie Wood was asking, do I need a monster portfolio to convince employers I'm worth giving an opportunity without a degree?
No, sorry. I think more like even having like there's people on here who have different range of sizes of portfolio. You still don't want to, once you're in a room with someone, you don't want to take up too much of the time. Like, you know, there's people on here who would love to look at people's portfolios, but they're spending 10 minutes doing it and being concise and being like, I have this skill, I have this skill, I have this skill. Or there's people who spend 2 hours talking about it. So I think even if you've got the biggest sort of background in the world, I think you've got to edit it anyway. So don't feel put off that you don't have an A1 like stack full of portfolio. Like, choose your best bits, even if there's not many of them.
And be confident with that. Yeah, that's very good advice. Harry Peach asked, is it possible to do these roles without being able to drive? I know we touched on this earlier. Or are there roles that are better suited to those that can't drive?
So when I started off, I couldn't drive.
Oh,
and I just assumed moving to London I would never need to drive. I had this whole bubble idea, if it's all transport, why would anybody need a car? And then I'm being asked to go and pick up giant props, and I'm sitting on a tube with like a giant aeroplane or something. Like, it's just not possible. So I didn't drive for the first kind of 6 months of commercial, which was a while. And all that time, the designer was like, you need to learn to drive, you need to learn to drive. So I was doing driving lessons kind of in the background, and then pretty much passed my test, had a car the next week, and have driven ever since. But
wow.
You haven't needed it as much at all, because you're working in production houses that are in central London, and I'm not carrying around giant props for the prep side of it anyway.
I would also say I, on Screen Skills, didn't get a job for 6 months because I couldn't drive.
Oh, wow.
And as soon as I passed my test, a week after, suddenly I got a job. So I would say that it's a really important skill, and that it does make a big difference, especially if you're sort of working on location or working in London where you have to go and pick stuff up. But that might just be for drama.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, like Liv said, I definitely felt like I absolutely needed to drive when I was younger, but I am 15 years or whatever into my career. I'm actually buying my first car next week. So I've managed it. Like, it is doable. You can try and wrap productions around your little finger and get taxis if you need to with props. I mean, you know, it's a bonus, but don't feel like it's the end of the world.
So don't let it hold you back. That's good advice. I've got another question here from Naomi. I think that's how I pronounce the name. I have a day production runner experience, but in light of coronavirus, she's struggling to find her first art department role. How would you suggest finding work as the industry starts up again? It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because we've not really experienced this. But
I mean, firstly, don't panic, because none of us are necessarily kind of getting straight back into it. So even those of us who might have been on something when it all came to an abrupt, quick, sudden pause are not necessarily getting back into those roles yet. So firstly, don't panic. I don't think that's weird that you're in that situation right now. And once it kind of over the next few weeks, things are starting to move again, just keep doing what we said before, like try and get hold of designers. It actually could be a good time because maybe things are being restructured and, you know, people are restructuring their teams. They might need, I mean, it's tricky because obviously teams are downsizing, not necessarily getting bigger because of, you know, the whole kind of social distancing thing. But I don't think it's a negative. I think she just needs to kind of carry on doing what she was doing before, I would say.
And hopefully, I mean, I know definitely I'm working at ITV and things are starting to come back into production at the moment, and, you know, things are being greenlit. So I think it will start to come back. So it's just going to be a bit slower than we would hope. So I'm hoping that, you know, things are going to get back up to full speed, and in the future it won't always be the case, will it, that it's quiet for jobs at the moment.
I think it's quite a good reflection, even though this is obviously a real exception and it's a massive period of time that we've not been working, but it is a good reflection in a small way that when I started working in TV, I really didn't, no one tells you that you won't get a job every week of every month. So you do get this initial panic of like, what am I going to tell my mum and dad? Like, I don't have a job next month. And we kind of stood there, we sat up in the middle of the night like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? But you do have to just really be confident and know that it will come. And if you're doing the right things, they do just come to you. But it is a good practice to kind of learn not to panic about not having a year's work of lineup, because no one does, as far as I've met, and no one will have their entire year full of work anyway. So just don't panic, I think.
That makes people feel better, I'm sure, like, you know, we're all in the same boat together type thing. I've got one more question here, and this is from Lauren, and she's saying, is working as a standby art director very different from the art department jobs that aren't on set? Would you be able to touch on what it entails? So an art director, standby art director.
Yeah, so a standby art director is basically on set at all times. So you'll be brought in pre-production to read scripts and do a script breakdown of kind of, can be anything, props, continuity notes, parts of set that are changing, redressing. And then from when you start filming, you're then on set for the entirety of filming, basically being there for the production designer, looking in the monitor and making sure everything looks as it should be, keeping an eye on continuity. Whereas all the other art department roles, other than kind of standby props and that side of things and dressing props, if you're like a dress person, art department assistant, you'll be mainly based in the office. I mean, that can change. Sometimes an art department assistant can be brought on set as well, but yeah, it's a completely different work environment, and you will expect different hours and to be networking with different people. You're more involved with everybody working on set, from the camera team, DOP, lighting, gaffers, everything like that. So yeah, it is different.
Yeah, and then in entertainment that role doesn't exist. So we are both. We are on set, physically on stage, and doing all the prep. So it's different.
Great. Oh, well, thank you so much for all your time today. I'm sorry if we haven't been able to answer anyone's question. We've kind of come to time now, but we have put the name of some of your courses that you've done in the chat box, as well as the Padlet. So hopefully have a quick look and see if you can get some information from there as well. And I wish all the RTS Futures members good luck trying to find, you know, their foot in the door or progress in the career. And thank you to all our panelists today. Emily, Lara, Emma, Lizzie, Maddie, Ruby, Liv, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a good rest of their day today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.